All right, really quick before we move on, I want to mention one more thing about the dependent variable and the independent variable. A lot of times in your text and in quizzes, it will call the dependent variable the dv and the independent variable the iv. So don't be confused when you run across that. Right, the next step in the scientific method is analyzing the results. And this is done through statistical analysis on the computer. You can do a lot of them by hand, but it can be very tedious. So I definitely prefer to use a computer. There's a lot of great programs that make it quite easy, and the school has access to those. And those of you who are in social science majors will likely take statistics courses and learn how to use those programs a little better. But what I want you to understand right now in the general psychology class is both those things discussed in your books about mediators and moderators, correlations. I want you to know positive correlation, what a negative correlation is, what it would look like with data with no correlation. But analyzing the results through statistical analysis basically will tell you if your results are beyond what you would get by chance. Like if you ran that experiment 100 times, could I possibly have gotten these results by chance? From the Milgram example, if he ran that, replicated it 100 times, how likely is it statistically that he would get those results by chance? And that's best done with control groups and experiments, things like that. There's other types of statistics that will give us correlations, but let's just focus on an experiment right now. So we would compare the control group and an experimental group and see, well, we see with the control group perhaps 0 people shock in the control group, but those people who have the independent variable of a experimenter pushing them to do it, all of them do it. So we run the statistics on that, and we find that we are well beyond chance happening. And so that is what the analysis does. The statistical analysis will tell us if our hypothesis was right or wrong. It tells us if our experiment or our study worked or didn't. It will give us trends, results like that. The next step, and one of the most important steps, beyond obviously the study and whatnot, is publishing the data, where then it can be criticized and replicated. This is essential because scientists need to put their best work out there for the field and for the lay person. So for both scientists and for regular people to go and read that work and then tear it apart, look into it, see, did they use the right methods, did they use the right measures, are their measures reliable and valid, are the things that does it make sense what they did, did they treat the control group and the experimental group the same other than the independent variable, did the study have the proper methods, are the results, are they claiming more than what the results say, things like that. And when you publish data, when you publish things in journals, in psychological journals, you get it reviewed by usually 3 other scientists in that field who will look at it. They'll send it back to you, say you need to fix these things, maybe you even need to run the study again or get more subjects. And so you do that, then you publish it, and then the field says, all right, this is great, and new psychologists that didn't even know about your project can read that. They can connect it to their work, be like, oh my goodness, this connects to what I'm doing over here. They can replicate it. There are even journals specifically for replication. A lot of big name psychologists don't do replication because it doesn't get them a lot of praise. But there's a movement in psychology right now for undergraduates like you guys to replicate studies that have been done previously, to write that up in a short report saying we did the study exactly the same way that, well, the IRB wouldn't let you do Milgram's experiment. That's a little unethical now. But for example, if they would allow that, you would say, I did Milgram's experiment, I replicated that again, I got the same findings he did. People are obedient to authority. You write your short report, and then you can get publications very easily that way, and experience in research very easily in undergraduate. There are also other opportunities to do research through directed research courses. there at BYU Idaho that you should take as you get into your junior and senior year if you're thinking of going into research in psychology, clinical or academic research. So let's go on to looking at an actual example of an experiment done at BYU Idaho. While I was there getting my undergraduate degree, I took this directed research course, and I used this scientific method to do a study about heroism. My hypothesis was, if you can train people to do maybe bad things, you can train people to do some kinds of good things, you can probably train people to do heroic action even, things that put themselves at risk for the good of others. And so that was my hypothesis. So what I did, I selected a measure. I created a study. I wanted to measure actual heroic behavior, so I put subjects in a situation where they had to either act heroically or not act heroically. I used an experiment, so I had a control group and an experimental group. The control group took a fake IQ test and went through a situation where they played darts, and the experimental group got that same IQ test with a couple different items added in that were supposed to help them think about doing heroic action, think about whistleblowing, about calling out people who are doing unethical things. And then, so the control group and the experimental group go into this game situation. So I'll describe this for you. Imagine that you've been assigned a teammate. Your teammate is pretty large in stature, and you're told you're going to play darts. So you're like, okay, that's good. My teammate looks fairly physical, looks like he might do sports, things like that. This might be good. And you're against another team of 2. In my experiment, these people were all Confederates. They all were in on the study. So during the course of the game, your team takes a turn, the opposing team takes a turn. While the opposing team is taking a turn, your teammate goes and steals money that the other team has won and puts it in your pile of money. So what do you do? What do you think you would do if you saw your teammate physically taking money from the other team? If you're in the control group, I can tell you, you wouldn't do anything in general. There was a small percentage of people who did act heroically, who stood up to this person, or who went and told the experimenter what had happened before the end of the experiment. But in general, people who didn't receive any kind of treatment did not act heroically, which isn't actually that surprising considering the literature, but it is unfortunate that we like to think that maybe we would do these things. But we'll talk about this experiment in heroism quite a few times throughout the course, since it's my pet research project. Anyway, the experimental group who got those priming items, making them think a little bit about whistleblowing, over half of those people, of those participants, called out this person that was large in stature, said, hey, you can't be stealing that, or they went and they told the experimenter before the experiment had ended. So they acted heroically. They fixed the problem at risk to themselves. They could have been socially ostracized. They may have feared for their safety with this large person, might have beat them up or something like that. So what I did, that was my measure, and that was my data that I got. I saw that I selected the measure of actual heroic behavior, and my data was the number of people who did and did not act heroically. And I analyzed these results. And the statistical analysis said my findings were beyond chance. I would not have found that by chance. If I ran that 100 different times, that would not have happened just by chance. So what I did to publish it was I presented this in the form of a poster at some different research conferences. BYU Idaho actually has an undergraduate research conference that I presented it to first, and it was a really great opportunity to get some experience presenting research at a conference, and that's something that all of you in any science will have the opportunity to do, is publish a poster and present it at the undergraduate research conference. Since then, I've taken that research and other research to other conferences around the world, international conferences, where people from around the world come and criticize and ask you questions face to face. Say, well, did you use this method? Did you use this measure? Why did you do this? How could I use this in this case? And it's a really great way to get those ideas out there to the field. So we've talked a lot about getting those scientific ideas out to the field through publishing, through replication, and those sorts of things. But you as students, where can you find valid research? And why should you find valid research? I'm sure you all see on Facebook quite often little surveys that people publish the results to, saying this and that, or in the news you'll hear different things that says all sorts of things related to psychology. But where can you find real information that comes from researchers? And these are three great places to do it. Google Scholar, which is one of my favorites, and another favorite, probably just under Google Scholar, is Psych Info. It's also called EBSCOhost. And you can access that through the BYU Idaho library online. And then references in your textbook are another way to find research. You'll see citations all throughout on data and things, and you can look up those studies that you find in your textbook through Psych Info or Google Scholar. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to go about finding some things. So here is the library homepage, and here is EBSCOhost. You would click there, and you may want to find something on heroism. And I know Zimbardo is a researcher in heroism. So here I found a piece of his research, and I can find a full text document where I can find a PDF or a website. Another example is through Google Scholar. So this is a free, both of these are free to BYU Idaho students through the library that you sign in through here. And this Google Scholar, it's just Google. You type in that website that you see up here, and you type in your search, the title you find in your book, subjects that you're interested in, whatever they may be. Maybe it's clinical that you're interested in. You want to look up something about depression. So you search for this, and you can see, okay, there's a book that Philip Zimbardo wrote about heroism. Here's a magazine article that he wrote. Oh, okay, here is a Journal of Psychology. So what am I going to do with that? I'll open up this PDF, and right here I have the same piece of research that any other psychologist, any other professional would read to know what happened with this study. So you have your abstract here that gives a summary about it. And this is how you students can find valid psychological research. And you can read the actual thing, where it comes from. A lot of news sources will cite where they got their information. Just plug in those citations into Google Scholar, read the original report, see if the news is twisting it. Because often they don't understand the science behind it, and they don't understand what the psychologists are saying, or they might want to twist it one way or the other for whatever reason. But this is a way that you students can use the tools provided for you and learn what real psychological research says. And as we go through the course, we will do this. We will read different research from the original documents, and it's a really great way for you to understand how psychology is presented to the world, a way that you can go and double check findings. And it's something that I really want you to remember, that these are free, they're available to you, they're very easy to use, and you can find real valid research that has been through this process, has been now published, has been criticized, has been replicated, that researchers have looked at, have commented on. If you look back here, you can see this has been cited by 15 people, this one by 208. So you can see this many researchers have looked at these projects and thought that they were good and used them. And so can you. And so these are tools that you can use as well, and that you will use as we go forward in the course to learn about psychology and to read some original research. That's the end of week 1 lecture, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to do the doodle if you haven't done it yet. And feel free to send me any questions or comments that you have, anything that you're not clear on. Thanks. Have a good week, guys.